author and is the go-to source for the media. Mitch's books include the industry's bestseller called Storytelling for Financial Advisors and the groundbreaking book, The New Retirement Mentality. He's also a columnist for Financial Advisor magazine and MarketWatch.com. He's a contributor to the Journal of Financial Planning. He has a daily radio feature called The Daily Dose, which is heard nationwide. And he's here today to talk to the Valmark member firms about the new retirement mentality. It's a new perspective on retirement planning and the process that goes way beyond the numbers and the financial heart of the matter. This is a critical message for us to hear in thinking about our own businesses and retirement as much as it is for the clients we serve. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mitch Anthony.
Good morning, everyone. This last year, I've had an unusual experience. The Pinehurst community. How many of you know of the Pinehurst community? I got to play number 2 here recently, and I understood what Gary McCord meant when he said hitting those greens is like trying to land a ball on a Volkswagen Beetle roof while it's moving. But I was invited twice, 6 months ago, to Pinehurst to talk to the Pinehurst community at large, which I thought, well, this is unusual because usually I'm talking to people before they retire, and these people are already retired. And it was quite an amazing experience. And then they invited me back just a month ago, but in my first meeting, I met a guy who came up to me. This was all sponsored by the Hospital Foundation, and their interest is health and wealth and just well-being at large, and they understood that the message I'm about to share with you has an awful lot to do with people's well-being in retirement. That's my number one concern. It's not how early can you retire. It's not do you have enough money to retire. It's all about, are you going to retire well? Are you going to be well in this phase of life we call retirement? So a gentleman came up to me. We had one night, we just had sort of a social mixer, and he came up to me and he said, Mitch, where do I find a retirement coach? I said, well, tell me your dilemma. He said, I just retired 6 months ago, and I'm going crazy. How many of you have heard these stories before, by the way? He said, I'm going crazy. And I said, well, tell me about your career. Well, he said, I invented carbon fiber. Oh, is that all? You remember the graphite golf clubs? And he did pretty well there, but he really did well in Formula One racing. They all use that, okay? He invented this thing. He's a scientist. He's got an active mind. And so he's telling me about his career. He's a very gregarious guy. You'd never take him for a scientist to meet the guy. And so he's telling me all about his career, and he said, you know, I got to fly to San Diego from North Carolina 3 times a month. He said, it gets kind of old, so I decided to retire, but he said, I'm going insane. And I don't know what to do, and I need someone to coach me through this the way you're coaching in your book. You ready for the punchline? John is 77 years old. I'm going to encourage you to entertain a thought here today to broaden your capacity in this conversation around retirement into the realm of retirement coaching. Reaffirm the idea I've had for years, and that is there's no amount of money on this planet that can buy you purpose in your life. There's no amount of money. And I often tell my consumer audiences, you might be one of the lucky ones. You've got more than enough money. You did the right planning. You used the ARC and you used the risk and you got it all figured out and you got it wired financially, and you never have to worry again about waking up and having enough money to live. You're one of the lucky ones, but then you wake up on day 43 of retirement and realize there's no reason, there's no purpose, there's no aim. How many of you have witnessed this with your own clientele? This is one of the great myths in America, that it's all about money, and if you get enough money, you're going to have purpose. Let me tell you something about money. Money will fund a purpose, but it will not generate a purpose. I want to tell you a couple other stories. I want to tell you about one of my heroes. Her name is Marie Enns. Marie and her husband were missionaries in Cambodia until the Khmer Rouge took place. And then they had to flee Cambodia in the 70s, and they moved to France because a lot of expatriate Cambodians were moving out to France, and so they continued their work there. While they were in France, her husband died, and when she returned to Cambodia in the 90s, and she continued her work alone. She built an orphanage. She built a home for widows of the killing fields. She built an AIDS home. She built a school. And Marie's denomination, which happens to be the same denomination of the church I attend, this is how I met Marie, called her in when she turned 66 years old, called her into headquarters and said, "Now, Marie, our retirement policy states that at 66 you must retire." And Marie said, "Well, what about the orphans?" "Well, we'll try to find somebody to take care of that." And everyone in this room knows, you know, it's your baby. It's your heart that created this thing. You just don't find somebody to come in. It'd be like going through the phone book and find someone to take over your practice. She said, "This doesn't make sense. Why does it matter that I'm 66? Doesn't it matter that I'm competent? Doesn't it matter that I'm still engaged? Doesn't it matter that I'm passionate? Why does it matter? Why is this decision?" And you know what the answer from the HR director was? "That's our policy. That's our policy." You know, I'm from Rochester, Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic, and I have this I just spoke at the Mayo Clinic to a group of doctors. I have this conversation every week. Some surgeon says to me, "I'm 65 years old, and they're putting pressure on me to walk out the door." And he said, "I've never been better at what I do in my life." Now, if you ever have to have a surgery, do you want a surgeon who's done 4,212 procedures or somebody who's on their 14th? Right? Experience matters, doesn't it, when you're a surgeon? Experience matters. I don't care what it is you do, experience matters. Well, where do you get experience? Through the years. And in our culture, we devalue age. Age becomes a diminishing feature. You know, I realized something, and I'll get back to Marie here momentarily. I realized something. I spoke in Korea, and I was flying home, and I suddenly had this epiphany. Do you realize that we live in one of the few cultures in the history of the planet Earth, right here, right now in North America? We live in one of the few cultures in the history of the planet Earth that does not venerate age and maturity. You realize that? One of the few cultures in the history of our planet. This includes all nationalities and all races and all ages. And what is it that we venerate in America? Rather than age and maturity, what do we venerate? Youth. Last time I checked on youth, they were stupid. That's never going to change. Now back to Marie. So Marie goes home to Alberta, where she's from. She's retired for a year. She is absolutely despondent and depressed. One day she starts thinking about it, and she says she's praying about it, and she decides, you know what? I'm taking my retirement savings, I'm taking what little I have in this world, and I'm going back to Cambodia, and nobody can stop me. And whether they want to back me, that's beside the point. I'll find my own backing, and guess what? That denomination wouldn't back her, so she had to she had to form her own foundation to do this. She called her 4 children and her 12 grandchildren together, and she said, "I'm 67, and nobody can tell me what to do with my life. I'm moving out. I'm going back to Cambodia." Cute little sidebar on this story. Marie told me right after the meeting with her family, she went to the grocery store and they had the Muzak playing on the system, and she said when she walked in the store, the song that was playing was Billy Joel's "This Is My Life, Leave Me Alone." Isn't that great? Today, Marie runs Place of Rescue 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 orphanages, 4 schools, 4 homes for widows, 3 AIDS facilities. She just came on a tour of the States this last fall. She's 81 years old. And she's informed all of us, when she goes, she's going to be buried next to those widows from the killing fields. Isn't that a great story? Marie has purpose. The question that keeps coming up is, what does age have to do with this? Do you realize that retirement fundamentally is a concept founded on an ageist idea? And the ageist idea is that all people are equal at whatever age you want to choose here, 62 or 65. Choose the age you want to choose. I'm going to go with 62. All people are equal at 62. Well, can we pause here and hit the brakes on that thought? How many of you agree with that idea, that all people are equal at the age of 62? Of course not. It's absurd. But it's because of retirement, because of retirement policy that we hold to this idea and we push people. And if you don't think this idea carries weight in our society, just ask anyone who's had a 60th birthday party what question they got asked more than any other question. What's the question you get asked at your 60th birthday party? That's right, because the assumption is built in that as soon as you turn 60, you should start thinking about retiring. Well, I'm a proponent of the new IRA, the individual independent retirement attitude. I'm going to do what's good for me in my life, not what the culture at large or the corporate culture at large tells me I ought to do. Anybody want to join me in that campaign? All right, that's what this is about. And we need a conversation. We need a conversation that opens this up to our clientele and opens up this possibility. All I'm doing with my book is giving people permission to do what they want with their life and not what the culture at large is telling them they ought to do. And I need your help in this. I need your help because you're the people they're going to specifically and individually for this permission slip. It's one thing for you to tell them they have enough money to retire. But we've already broached on this topic, and I'll finish it up with this. Here's the two things you need to retire well. Enough purpose to wake up in the morning and enough money to sleep at night. You need both. And if you don't have both, it's an empty but well-funded existence.